Welcome to Starting Five here on the Five Reasons YouTube channel. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick and at Five Reasons Sports. Our producer today is Manny Chang, here every Monday and Wednesday on the channel. Make sure you hit like, subscribe, turn the notifications on. Also, check out all of our other content. Of course, we have Pulse of Fins Nation every Tuesday night at 7:30. Inside Leverage Show every Wednesday night at 7:30 or 8 o'clock. Also, catch the Scouting Combine and regular episodes of 3 Yards per Carry and Five on the Floor. We have two sponsors here today on the program, including our friends over at U-Brake Wheel Fix. You can find them at ubrakewheelfix.com. That's with the letter U at the beginning. If you ever run over a pothole so hard your steering wheel shakes or you're constantly losing air in your tires that you need to keep adding air, chances are there's an issue with your wheels, and U-Brake Wheel Fix is your solution. Miami's premier wheel repair and restoration company with over 20 years of experience, located in North Miami. U-Brake Wheel Fix offers quick repairs for damaged wheels. In most cases, can offer a free loaner wheels to keep you on the road while repairing your damaged wheel. Also, if your wheels are looking weathered, freshen them up. Don't replace, refinish them. Contact Mark and his staff at 305-748-0112. That's 305-748-0112, or on all the socials, including Instagram at U-Brake Wheel Fix. If you mention Five Reasons, you get 5.5% off your next repair. Again, it's ubrakewheelfix.com. Also sponsored by PrizePicks. Make sure you use the code 5, put down $5 today, make your first play legal in the state of Florida, and they will give you $50 to play right away. All right, Monday night game tonight, but really all the talk in Miami is about next Sunday and Tua Tagovailoa. So Tua has made it clear that he's not planning to retire. Of course, there are financial reasons not to do so. If he retires without getting the doctor word that he can't play again, he loses a lot of money. And that should play into this. And we're going to get into on Five on the Floor tonight this comparison of this to the Chris Bosh situation. I think that there are a lot of parallels between these two situations, and I think it might head a similar direction where it might ultimately be the team that steps in here. We'll see if they actually do. And there are liability and insurance concerns. I mean, this goes beyond just whether or not you want the guy to play, the guy wants to play, and all that. There's a big financial risk to Tua playing again. And that's part of what led to Chris Bosh's ultimate retirement. I mean, the Heat were trying to do the right thing. I always believe that. I think Chris believes it now. He didn't believe it at the time, but they wanted to make sure that, honestly, the man wasn't going to die on the court. I mean, he had two separate blood clot incidents, and it was very risky for him to play. If he got hit the wrong way, that could be it. I mean, the reality is with Tua Tagovailoa at this point, when we're talking about a minimum of 3 reported concussions, then you go back to what happened at Alabama. Then you go back to others that may have not been reported. And the fact that it is easier to get another concussion and to get a more severe concussion the next time after you've had one, the team has to be concerned about that. I mean, regardless of what Tua and his family may believe or want, and my feeling is that Tua is likely going to want to try to play. I figured that. He's a competitor. He wants to be out there. This is his life. This is what he knows. But ultimately, there are other factors that become involved here. And, I think the way that this plays out, in the long run, maybe not with this particular incident, but down the road, is that somebody's going to step in and say, you can't do this anymore, or we can't employ you to do this anymore. And that may be, again, where that's headed. And that's where this Chris Bosh situation headed. But I want to get into it in another way here. And we have a Take Five. We do these Take Fives here on the channel where various contributors in the Five Reasons Sports Network provide their opinions. And Eric Wadicki had a good take on this, and I want to follow up on it, where he said that this is really where Mike McDaniel's on the spot and the organization's on the spot. And Mike McDaniel's gotten his extension. He got it through 2028, and he got it in part because of what he did with Tua. The fact that he essentially restored Tua's confidence, made him a viable player in the NFL, which Brian Flores was not intent on doing. In a lot of ways, Brian Flores was undermining him, keeping him down, keeping him from fulfilling his draft spot, 5th overall, whereas McDaniel made him a player along obviously with Tua's help, Tua's work, where he could lead the league in passing yards. And of course, he was available for all 17 games. These men were tied at the hip. But you have to adjust in the NFL, and particularly with a player that you knew had an injury history and was an injury risk and was a risk to be absent again. And this is on, in some regards, Mike McDaniel and Chris Greer, because I kept saying before the season started, you couldn't count on Tua playing every game again. Now, did I know that he was going to get hit or he was going to hit DeMar Hamlin and end up going out and having this kind of a situation again? No, I didn't know that. But the odds are quarterbacks miss time. And when you looked at their roster in the preseason, the one glaring hole to me of all of the problems they have, we can talk offensive line, we can talk about replacing Xavier Howard, or which they believe that they did, or maybe a new linebacking core, or the fact that you didn't know if you're going to have Phillips back as a pass rusher by the start of the season, and Chubb was still out. All the things that we got into, but the single biggest issue, in my view, on the team was backup quarterback, because backup quarterbacks have to play in the modern NFL. And Tua playing every game last year, not only was it surprising for someone like Tua, it's unusual for any quarterback these days. And I kept pointing back to the 2002 season, where the Miami Dolphins had probably their most talented team in the past 20 years, at least until this one, or what this one was supposed to be. And they had a team that had Ricky Williams, acquired in a trade, who would rush for 1,853 yards. They had Jason Taylor at 18 and a half sacks. They had a veteran group of skill position players, because they brought it. Chris Chambers was entering his second year. They had Gadsden. They had on defense, obviously, still a lot of those guys like Tim Bowens, Zach, etc. The secondary was Sertan Madison. They had a group that was ready to win then, and they actually started the season 4-1. They went into Denver, and on a snowy, cold night, Sunday night game, they won 24-22 on an Alindo Murray field goal. And then we went down to the basement, or whatever, the back area of the stadium, and there was Jay Fiedler, Arondi Gadsden, and Chris Chambers all going to the training room. Chambers got lit up by Kenoy Kennedy, was never really the same player. Gadsden hurt his thumb. We didn't realize how bad it was at the time, but that kind of ended up being the beginning of the end for him with Miami. That was a lingering injury. But the biggest issue was that Jay Fiedler hurt his hand and ended up missing 6 weeks. And in those 6 weeks, they had to turn to Ray Lucas, who actually had performed fairly well for the Jets. I believe he won like 3 or 4 of his 5 games with the Jets, but again, was not considered to be a big time quarterback prospect. I mean, at Rutgers. And he was, and look, a lot of us loved Ray personally. Okay. Ray was an interesting guy. Okay. He was he had a big personality, but he wasn't up to the task. I mean, he went in the first game against Buffalo at home. He had 6 turnovers. They went 2-4 during those 6 games. That team felt it was prepared to back up Jay Fiedler with someone who could hold it down if Jay was out, especially because Jay was not considered to be a guy who had to drive the train. I mean, he was essentially, a caretaker type quarterback who was expected to kind of pick up third downs, let the running game work, turn it over to the defense. That was the kind of team that Wannstedt wanted. It was the kind of team that Jimmy Johnson wanted before Wannstedt, which was one of the reasons he drove Marino out. But Ray Lucas was not the guy, and they went 2-4, and everybody was screaming for Jay to come back. And by the time he came back, they were 7-5. They won 2 games. Then they lose up in Minnesota when Chris Carter drops a touchdown pass against his old team. And then they had the meltdown in New England, and a team that, again, was one of the most talented teams of the past 20 years for the Dolphins, maybe the most talented, ends up missing the playoffs. Okay. And I kept repeating this before the season, like, they are not protected at quarterback, especially when they have this kind of offensive line. Now, our guy Eric Smith has made the case over and over here that the line was not as bad in the past couple of weeks, particularly this last week, as people are saying it was. And Tua was injured on a play that was not the result of an offensive line problem. He was trying to pick up a first down, and he didn't protect himself. In fact, he initiated the contact with Hamlin. Okay, that's not on the line. But with all of that being said, you knew that the line was an issue, right? You knew that Tua has pre-existing conditions. And yet, Skylar Thompson, and that's it? That's where you're at? I mean, he didn't beat out Mike White. Mike White was just awful during camp. So now you're going into this, and we're talking about maybe it's Beathard, which quarterback they're going to possibly pick up. Um, I mean, do you feel comfortable with Skylar? Let's say that Tua goes on IR and misses what 4 weeks in a bye. He gets 38 days off. He's totally cleared. Let's just say that's the direction this goes. I don't have any reporting on that, but this is something that's been speculated. You expect Thompson to get you through there, or somebody you're going to bring off the street? So this is ultimately a failure of Chris Greer, and to some extent, as much as I hate to say it, because I'm a big fan of the guy, Mike McDaniel, because McDaniel is working directly. The offense is his baby. Okay. It's his baby. I mean, we know that. The defense, we talked about what Weaver was going to provide as opposed to Fangio as opposed to the last guy. But ultimately, McDaniel is in charge of the offense. Okay. He was in charge of this connection with Tua. And here's where I think that this thing got screwed up. All right. I do think that they were afraid to put a real competitor against Tua, which I understand to some degree, because again, you had the issues with confidence early on and all that. But if you were comfortable enough to pay Tua the kind of money that you ultimately paid him, you had to be comfortable enough to not necessarily bring him competition for the spot, but prioritize backup quarterback in a way that you're not avoiding bringing in someone of significance simply because you want to make it clear that Tua is the guy. And it has felt like that since Fitzpatrick was here. That it's like, okay, that was a whole controversy. Obviously, Flores made the situation worse, but you didn't want another situation where you had somebody who was in there who was considered to be a threat to Tua. Well, if you're giving Tua close to $200 million, whatever it was, obviously he's not threatened, okay? They had to have a better option here than Skylar Thompson. And I understand you can't spend on everything, but this team has splurged in certain areas on speed and all that. And to not have that position covered. Now, maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe Skylar Thompson will be great the next few weeks. He's done some okay things when they've had him in there. Obviously, in the playoff game, he gave them a chance to win, also a chance to lose in Buffalo when Tua was out a couple of years ago. But again, if people are going to say to me, well, you have to have it as a starter here and then your backup here. I'll just point to other situations around the NFL, over the past 25, 30, 35 years. I mean, where you had Montana and Young, there have been teams that have had two quarterbacks of high value at the same time. This comes in from J Mill 845. Tua was injured as a result of the O-line. If they were a real unit, this offense could function without needing 1.5-second releases. Maybe we're not in a position where Tua needs to make that. No, that's true. I get that, and I knew I was going to get called out on that. But again, every quarterback needs to scramble at times. I mean, Mahomes scrambles at times, right, to make a play, to pick up a first down. Allen does it. Sometimes it's designed, sometimes it's not. Julio Gonzalez says, Miami knew that Tua was prone to concussions and extended him anyway. Flores was right. Justin Herbert was the way to go. First thing, on the Flores thing, hasn't that been disproved about Flores wanting Justin Herbert? I not that this is wrong, but isn't the reporting since then that he really wanted Love? I feel like Flores wants whoever it is convenient to say that Flores wanted at the time. There's a lot of inconsistent reporting about that. As far as Justin Herbert goes, I don't know. I mean, are we? How impressed are we with Justin Herbert at this point? I mean, Justin Herbert may be the worst high-profile fourth-quarter quarterback in the league. I don't know if that's the example I would cite. If you want to cite an example, right? Exactly. If you want to thank you, Manny. If you want to cite an example of, the Dolphins sort of overreaching on Tua, then you can argue that they shouldn't have given him the extension. That's a reasonable argument. You can make an argument that they should have made him prove it for the fifth year. Road to Greatness. Peyton and Manning, Drew Brees, Tom Brady, Joe Montana, none of them built the O-line. I understand, but the modern NFL is a little different than some of those guys. I know Brady's a little more contemporary, but Montana and all that, quarterbacks weren't. I mean, when Steve Young was running during those days, it was like, what the hell is he doing? The modern NFL guys run. I mean, Josh Allen averages 45 to 50 yards rushing per game. He didn't have to do that against the Dolphins, but he's done that, and he still is considered to be. I mean, he's a guy with a huge arm, obviously. So quarterbacks will run these days. I don't. And look, our guy Lewis Sung said all offseason, Tua needs to get more mobile. He needs to make more plays outside the pocket. They need to make more improvisational plays. He also needed to learn how to slide. He's never really learned how to do that. This comes in from JMill845. Do you know anything about the relationship between Greer and Ross? Genuinely wondering how this guy still has a job. More draft capital than any GM, and we've done absolutely nothing. That's a good question. I feel like with Greer that everything got blamed on whoever else was around at the time. Now, I mean, Greer's been around so long that I haven't covered the Dolphins full time in a long time, and he was there when I was there full time. I mean, he's been there forever, and we never really knew what exactly his role was. And the Dolphins had this issue for years because they used to flip their GMs all the time. Remember when Wannstedt was technically above Spielman, and they swapped it. They put Spielman above Wannstedt. They put Marino above Spielman. They made Saban keep Spielman. Then Saban blew Spielman out after 1 year. Then he brought in Mueller. Then Mueller was blown out after 1 year. And then, Mueller was in there for Cameron, and then they fired both of them. And then Ireland stayed beyond the time. Like, this happens all the time where you never know who's really in charge. But the one guy who has been there the entire time, at least the last, 15 plus years, is Chris Greer. And I am at the point where, regardless of what you think of this move or that move or whatever, and there have been some good draft picks in there, no question. And he has been very aggressive in the trade market. He's done things that the Heat have not done, that Heat fans have complained about. He's went out and gotten the stars, whether it's been Ramsey or Hill, etc. They've extended the majority of their players, not Wilkins, but most of them. I think he cut bait on X at the right time. But even with all that being said, the results are the results. You are what your record says you are, to quote Parcells, who I don't quote very often. And they haven't won a damn playoff game since he's been here. And the two excuse, you can't use it because, again, the guy is brittle to a certain degree. And it would be like the Heat going into the season expecting Tyler Hero to play 80 games. Come on. You have to have protection at the position. And I would love to be pleasantly surprised about Skylar Thompson, but I just don't see it. I see it's like he makes a play. We're like, oh, okay, he made a play. Like, the talent's in there somewhere. But I'm going to bring that back to McDaniel too. McDaniel is an offensive guru. What does he see in Skylar Thompson that the rest of the NFL did not see? And a lot of us are still not seeing after 3 years. So here's where I'm at with it. I said before the season, okay, and we'll close here, and we got plenty of Dolphins content throughout the week. We'll find out more about Tua this week for sure. There's going to be a lot of reports. This is going to drag on for a while. But I said this before the season. This team has to win a playoff game this year. The fact that the quarterback got hurt, to me, it's not a get out of jail free card, because this was a possibility that he would miss some time. Now, if Tua's done, if he doesn't play it all the rest of the season, then okay, that's another story. Okay, teams, that's a seismic event and all the rest of this. But if he ends up missing 4 games and 4 games, 5 games, and comes back healthy, a lot of quarterbacks miss 4 games. Again, Jay Fiedler missed 6 games in the 2002 season, and we blame them for not making the playoffs when they squandered the thing against Minnesota, New England at the end. So people will have to be held accountable. In my view, and I'll close with this, and again, check out the rest of our content. You Break Wheel Fix. Thank you for sponsoring PrizePicks.com. Use the code 5. I'll be on with Alex Dono tomorrow for 5 guys. We'll be on during the middle of the day. Comes back to this. If they don't make the playoffs this year, then I do think Chris Greer's got to go. You extended McDaniel, so you'll pivot and go a different direction at the GM position and not the coach, but they got to make the playoffs. And not having a quarterback when you've had opportunities to kind of fortify the position over the past couple of years behind Tua, protect yourself from this, to me is, again, it's not it's a reason things happen. It's not an excuse for why things would happen. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate it. We'll have lots of content here during the day. There's things that you want to see on the channel. J Mill, make it happen. I don't have that kind of power, trust me. Certainly not in that facility, but thank you, J Mill. We appreciate everybody watching. Thanks to Manny for producing. Again, check out Pulse of Fins Nation tomorrow night, and also PrizePicks. Use that code 5. And then Wednesday, check out the Inside Leverage show here on the channel. Have a good one.